Man, some stories just hit you harder than others, you know? And this whole thing with Cwrcwe, that 7-year-old girl in the Eastern Cape, it's just been weighing on me. I mean, the alleged rape, the public outrage, the marches in Gauteng demanding justice, it's intense.
It's definitely ignited a huge reaction, and rightfully so.
Hmm.
What's interesting, though, is how all that raw emotion, that need for answers and accountability, it all spills onto social media these days. That immediate digital response, it's fascinating and a little bit scary all at the same time.
Yeah, it's like a whole other layer to this story, isn't it? Because alongside the public outcry, you have the government issuing these warnings about reckless social media use, even specifically mentioning this one guy, Ivan Twala. It really makes you think about the power and the potential pitfalls of all this online engagement.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why we're here, right?
Yeah.
To unpack it all, we've got a bunch of sources for this deep dive, news articles from Times Live, Bone Magazine, Diamond Fields Advertiser. Plus, we've been looking at some of the social media posts and opinions that are out there.
So basically, we're trying to figure out what the government's so worried about.
Yeah.
What are they seeing online that's got them concerned? And what are the potential legal consequences for people who might be crossing the line, especially with the Cybercrimes Act in the mix?
Yeah, that Cybercrimes Act, it's a big deal. But first, let's talk about what the government's actually saying. The Justice, Crime Prevention, and Security Cluster, they came out pretty strongly against what they called irresponsible and reckless social media use. They really stressed how insensitive it is to Cwrcwe, her family, the whole community impacted by this horrific crime.
They didn't mince words, that's for sure.
Right.
And they went a step further, right? They even called out social media users who they think are exploiting the situation, using this incredibly sensitive case involving a minor just to get attention.
Exactly. And that raises a big question, doesn't it? What are people's motivations when they post online? Are they genuinely concerned, or is there something else going on?
It makes you wonder, okay, so we've got this backdrop of heightened emotions and potential for harm, but obviously freedom of speech is a fundamental right. Where does the government stand on that? Did they address it?
They did, and they were clear that while the right to free speech is absolutely essential, it's a cornerstone of our democracy, it's not unlimited. They specifically pointed out the limits that already exist, like prohibitions against propaganda for war, incitement of violence, hate speech that causes harm, stuff that's clearly unacceptable.
Right, those are the bright lines. So how does the Cybercrimes Act play into all of this?
Well, the government specifically mentioned how the Cybercrimes Act strengthens their ability to tackle hate speech online. This act, it gives them more tools to prosecute online harassment and the spread of harmful, false information.
Okay, so hold on. Does the Cybercrimes Act actually create new definitions of hate speech for the digital world? Or is it more about enforcing existing laws in this new online environment?
That's a really good question. It's more about enforcement. The act gives them more ways to investigate and prosecute offenses that were maybe harder to address before, especially online.
Got it. So they're basically saying, we're watching, and we have the means to act if things go too far.
Exactly. And speaking of going too far, let's talk about Ivan Twala. He's the guy whose Facebook post really caught the government's attention.
Yeah, what exactly did he post that caused such a stir?
He posted a comment in Setswana, Yak Wekweya Gripa. And the translation is pretty graphic and sexually explicit. Basically, it's a deeply offensive comment about Cwrcwe, the little girl.
It's just disgusting. I mean, given what she's allegedly been through, a comment like that is beyond insensitive. It's potentially really damaging. And people were understandably outraged.
Oh, yeah. It sparked a massive backlash online. Other social media users, people like Thulani and Daba, they were publicly calling for Twala's arrest. There was this real sense of anger and a demand for consequences.
And the government, through the Department of Justice, Crime Prevention, and Security, they chimed in too, right? Yeah. I remember seeing something about their initial response.
Yeah, initially they posted on X saying that they'd reported the matter to SAPS, the South African Police Service, but then they deleted that post and put up the more general warning about reckless social media use that we talked about earlier.
Huh, that's interesting. Makes you wonder why they changed their approach. But either way, they were clearly aware of Twala's post and took it seriously.
Absolutely. And then, after all the backlash, Twala came out and claimed that his account was hacked. He said he'd never post something like that, especially since he's a father himself. He even issued an apology.
Oh, the classic, I was hacked defense. Did the authorities buy it?
Not really. Our sources say they're pretty skeptical about the hacking claim. They said they're investigating, and if they find out that Twala did actually write the post, he could face legal action.
So even a single comment, even if he claims it wasn't him, could land him in serious trouble. It shows how carefully people need to think before they post anything online.
For sure. And it's not just the government who's taking this seriously. Women's rights groups, like Women for Change, they also condemned Twala's comment. They called it dangerous and irresponsible and talked about how it could embolden perpetrators and re-traumatize victims.
Yeah, that's a really important point. It's not just about one offensive comment. It's about how these kinds of things can contribute to a culture where violence against women and girls is tolerated or even encouraged.
Exactly. And, we also have to consider some of the other perspectives we found in the pasted text. One thing that came up was the concern that people might be trying to get famous or infamous by attaching themselves to the Cwrcwe case.
Like they're trying to ride the wave of attention, even if it's negative attention. That's a dangerous game, especially when you think about the potential consequences. Imagine losing your job or your reputation because of something you posted online.
It's a huge risk. And there's another, even darker possibility that came up in the pasted text. Some people are suggesting that these offensive posts might be a deliberate tactic to distract from the real issue.
Like a smokescreen. So instead of focusing on getting justice for Cwrcwe and all the other child victims, we're getting caught up in these side controversies.
Exactly. It's a chilling thought, but it's something we have to consider. It really underscores the importance of staying focused on the bigger picture here, which is protecting children and holding perpetrators accountable.
So putting it all together, it seems like the government's not messing around. They're watching what's happening online, and they're ready to use the Cybercrimes Act to crack down on posts that cross the line.
Right. And the case of Ivan Twala, whether he was hacked or not, is a perfect example of how risky it is to post offensive content, especially when you're talking about a sensitive case like this.
So to sum it all up, the government is deeply concerned about social media activity around the #JusticeForCwrcwe case. They've warned against insensitive posts, highlighted the potential harm, and made it clear that the Cybercrimes Act is in play. And the Twala case shows us just how real the consequences can be.
Yes. This whole situation really highlights the tension between freedom of speech and protecting vulnerable people from harm online. It's a tough balance to strike.
It really is. And it leaves us with a lot to think about. How do we express ourselves authentically online while still being responsible? How do we protect children from harm in the digital world? And what role should the law play in drawing the line between free speech and harmful content? These are big questions, and there are no easy answers. But they're questions we all need to keep grappling with as we navigate this increasingly complex online landscape.
I agree. It's a conversation that needs to continue.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll leave you with those thoughts to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time.